Okay, I'm a big fan of our next speaker, mostly because she works at the same agency that I do, at Lessing Flynn Advertising. But the reason why I was such a big fan of Emily is I met her at a networking event at a table. She said, "Hello, I'm Emily Beckman, nice to meet you." And about a year and a half after that, we got her resume in for a job, and I certainly championed her hire. She's made me look fantastic for doing so. You ever had somebody that just exceeds your expectations? That's Emily Beckman. So without further ado, at Ekbeck, as she's known on Twitter, talking Pinterest. Please welcome Emily.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, as Josh mentioned, I am at Ekbeck, and I scheduled a couple of tweets along with the presentation with a few of the statistics I'm going to use. So follow along if you want to have some of those via Twitter there. So I'm Emily. I am the typical demographic user of Pinterest. I'm 25, and I'm a female. Most Pinterest users are between 24 and 44. 70% are female, 30% are male. So Pinterest, I thought would be an interesting topic for this conference, basically because Pinterest, what it is it inspires people. We're all talking about what inspires us today, what's inspirational. Well, that's exactly what this new social media network site is all about. It's about inspiring people, finding things that inspire you. So I guess one of the reasons I really like that is because of the inspiration aspect. I also like that it's not constantly having people throw tweets or Facebook posts in your face. It's more of an interactive thing. On Pinterest, about 80% of people's pins are actually repins. So they're taking somebody else's content and they're repinning it. They're not necessarily throwing out their own message. Whereas on Twitter, about 1.4% of tweets are retweets. So that's them taking your message and repinning it. So there's a great opportunity for you to get your content and information out there in front of people. And then also, I guess we probably should note that at the beginning of this month, it became the third largest social network behind Facebook and behind Twitter. So obviously, it's a place that you probably want to play for yourself and maybe as far as your brand or your company goes. So a lot of people say, well, I'm on Pinterest, but I don't know if I should get my company on Pinterest. I don't sell yarn. I don't have recipes. Like, what am I supposed to do on Pinterest as my brand? I really think it's all about how you create yourself, create your brand's personality and the image of kind of a lifestyle or as, showcasing what makes your brand tick, behind the scenes information maybe. So a couple of brands that I found on Pinterest that I think are really interesting and kind of unique, let's say we could call them unlikely brands. One would be the U.S. military. The U.S. Army is on Pinterest, and they have some phenomenal boards. They have everything from families to Army fashion, so starting back in the day and coming up to how the uniforms have changed. They have Army food. They have, seriously, everything you could think of. They have technology. There are thousands of people following these boards for the U.S. Army. U.S. Army? That's like tough and rough stuff. You would not expect them to be on Pinterest. So there's one brand who's doing it very successfully. Another brand that I found that I really like is GE, General Electric. You wouldn't necessarily think that they have a lot of images to share, content maybe on Pinterest. A few of the boards that they have that I really like, one's called Badass Machines. Yeah, cool. So there's a ton of big machines that they just showcase because, they all run off electricity, and that's kind of what they do. So they're showing their brand and they're showing their personality through these boards that they create on Pinterest and through the followers and the interactions. They also have a couple of different boards, like from the factory floor, so showing like an inside scoop about the brand and what the company is doing. And they had a campaign that was called the What Works campaign. They had people basically submit tweets, hashtags to them about sharing the people, the places, and things in America that make America work. What makes America work? Why are we great? And then they pick one winner every week, and they pin to a board. And they have thousands of people following this board and pins from all over the world into this one Pinterest board. A couple of local brands. I like to keep it local, so a couple that I want to throw out there that I think are doing a good job. Drake University is one of maybe an unlikely brand you would think. They're being covered everywhere as their Pinterest boards grow. They have cute things like little bulldogs, and they have accessories for alumni. So I really think the main thing about Pinterest is being creative and thinking of how you can use it with your brand, with your company and getting behind the scenes look and being a little bit more interesting than just throwing your products in front of people's faces. Another, I guess, local brand that's on Pinterest that I see a lot is Dwala. They're obviously getting a lot of national attention, but they pin out their news articles. So I see them on Pinterest all the time. Let's say Gusto Pizza, Lessing Flynn Advertising. A lot of local brands are starting to pick up, which is pretty, I think they're being pretty much innovators because not a lot of big brands are on Pinterest. So I guess if you say to me, Emily, well, I'm not really sure about this whole Pinterest thing. How can I get started? How can I dip my feet into the water with brands? Well, I have a couple of tips that I would just suggest. Do your homework. So get around on Pinterest, see what your competitors are doing, see what they're doing well, see what you don't think they're doing well, see what boards they have, what boards are being followed more than others, and why do you think that is? There's also Pin Etiquette. It's a social networking site. So you can go on to Pinterest and see kind of what people expect to see on Pinterest, what they're going to react well to. And it is a social networking site, so the social networking rules apply. You're going to want to interact with people. You don't want to just consistently put out your content. As I stated before, 80% of the pins on Pinterest are repins. So you want to interact with others. You want to make sure you're commenting, make sure you're liking, and all sorts of things. Keywords is another big thing for Pinterest. Pinterest works more like a search engine, not necessarily a social media site. So make sure when you're pinning things on Pinterest that you use hashtags and you use specific keywords, because people are more than likely going to go to Pinterest and search knitting or, I don't know, food. And then your content's going to be pulled through that. They're not necessarily going to be just searching for your brand, but they might stumble upon it based on the content that you're pinning as well. One big thing that I get people asking about all the time is copyright. I am not a lawyer, and I'm not going to pretend that I am a lawyer, so take this for what it's worth. The best way to obviously avoid all of that is to pin things that you have copyrights to, obvious, or to pin things that I guess are from your sources, from your website. You can go online. I'll tweet out an article that I found from an actual lawyer about all the different rules and regulations with Pinterest for brands, but I'd say it's something that you want to be careful with. I haven't seen any huge cases come out yet, but I'm sure over time, people like money, people like to sue. It'll probably come up in the news somehow, but just be a little bit careful when you're using it, especially as a brand versus personally. So how can brands use Pinterest specifically? Well, everyone knows that a brand might want to go on and pin their products. If you want to pin your product, you can put a little $sign. That'll put a $sign up in the left-hand corner, so when people are searching on Pinterest, they see your product, they know how much it costs. That's one option. I also think that if you do that, you could have a pin board on your Pinterest, here are my products, but then you also want to have a slew of other boards that are not just your products. But I don't think it's bad to include your products, because then again, it's made up of your brand and your lifestyle. That's who you are, what you do. Give behind-the-scenes information. At Lessing Flynn, we have all of our bios of all the people that make our work, that make our organization and our agency tick, and all of our little quirks. So that's just a good way for people to interact, get to know your brand, and get to know your personality a little bit more. One thing I like about Pinterest is you can kind of use it as a focus group almost, or kind of like crowdsourcing, because you can see your followers, you can see exactly what all of their interests are, what their likes are. I thought one interesting example I found was Kotex. They recently did an ad where they took 50 influential people that had Pinterest boards, so bloggers, they're very active on the social media community. They made 50 gift boxes based on the individual person's Pinterest boards. So if they had a DIY project, they made that DIY project, put it packaged up with a couple other things they were interested in, sent it out to these people. Just 50. And they got almost 700,000 impressions just from this one campaign, sending 50 gifts out, personalized gifts. So just there's unique, interesting ways that you can use it that you might not necessarily think of. Of course, there are the contests on Pinterest, the pin to win. I've seen some bingo contests with pinning pictures with numbers on there. Or search around on Pinterest. You can find a ton of those if you need a few examples. Land's End really started kind of pioneering that, so check that one out. Better Homes and Gardens, another local brand that has a really good Pin It to Win It contest right now. Of course, your boss is going to come to you and say, how are we going to measure this? Why are we doing this? Are we spending time on this? Well, you can obviously track your interactions, your pins, your repins, your comments with people. Right now, there's not a great social reporting tool that they have, but I know that I found online there is kind of a social dashboard called Pinnerly that hasn't launched yet, but you can put your email address in there and sign up for it, which I'm assuming is going to kind of do that, the background statistics of everything, be able to schedule tweets, much like a Hootsuite would be. And then also you want to make sure that you track Pinterest.com in your web analytics so you can see if there's referring links. That's one thing that you can do, you have control over. And then I found it really interesting that you can find who's pinning your content if you go to Pinterest.com/source/your URL. You can find out if anybody's pinned an image from your URL, it will show up on there. So that's something that's kind of handy. I think I tweeted that one out, so take a look at that. I guess to recap, I think that there's a ton of different ways that you can use and support your brand by really engaging with people, with your audience, with your consumers, as to what you love and what you're passionate about. If anything, after this presentation, I hope that you go out and at least secure your brand's handle. Some brands like Louis Vuitton, Burger King, Coke, they didn't do that. So now they have people out there with their handles, which is probably not a good thing. So make sure you go out there, at least check out Pinterest and get your handle for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to change gears here a little bit. It's like surprise tweet. We are going to fill the next space with an announcement from Deb. So I'll